Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
Hey, it's our travel unit. And this is day 2 of our unit talking about Petra. We're describing it as the rose-red city of Jordan. It has beautiful high sandstone cliffs, which are described as being like the color of blush at dawn. If you get up really early and look into the sky, sometimes you'll see this beautiful pink-red color, and that would be blush. We've discovered it's not just those high sandstone cliffs that are great, though. Once you get through the Seek, those are those high cleft cliffs that you can see. You arrive at something that's quite lovely, and that is Al-Khazneh. It's the treasury, and it was once the tomb of kings. I bet there aren't any bodies or even treasure left in those tombs.
But yeah, you can see the treasury there, and then you can also see the monastery, which is called Al-Dair. And then, of course, you've got this big area. It's an arena, and they've got the pool and garden complex there. And, of course, the landscape there, again, is made out of sandstone. So, yeah, it has the color of the blush of dawn. So, yeah, it's going to be very picturesque. And make sure you bring your camera with you, or maybe even bring your sketchbook and do some great pastel drawings or some watercolor paintings. It's probably a great place for that. But in any case, we're going to find out some more things about Petra in today's program. So, let's get to it. Let's read through today's lesson now one time. Archaeologists have found evidence of human dwellings at Petra dating back to around 1500 BC. Petra made an excellent fortress since the high cliffs protect the sheltered valley from assault. Later, the Nabatean Arabs settled there and made significant improvements, creating an ingenious system of dams and waterways that kept them supplied with water from a nearby spring. Petra grew rich as it was near an important trade route that ran from Arabia to Egypt and the cities of the Mediterranean. The Nabateans were eventually absorbed into the Roman Empire, and since the Romans preferred trading by sea, Petra fell into decline. This was hastened by an earthquake in 363 AD that ruined the waterway system. The city was lost to Western explorers until a Swiss traveler wrote about it after an expedition there in 1812. Since then, Petra has become a symbol of Jordan and a popular tourist destination. It was made a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1985 and named as one of the new 7 Wonders of the World in 2007. Petra is famous as the setting for the climax of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and is also featured in the second Transformers movie. Unfortunately, the increase in tourism has had some adverse effects. The guides there have to be constantly on their guard to prevent tourists from climbing or writing on the structures or breaking off pieces for souvenirs. What's worse, some of the restoration projects that have taken place have utilized cement, which actually accelerates the weathering process. With the city already endangered by erosion, Petra is in need of protection. Experts have called the tourism there unsustainable. Some areas, such as the burial chambers inside Al-Khazneh, are now off-limits. Should you be fortunate enough to visit Petra, remember to show some respect to this delicate treasure.
Okay, guys, let's take a look at day 2. We've got archaeologists who have found evidence of human dwellings at Petra. And these things they found date back to 1500 BC. That's very, very old. An archaeologist is a scientist who has gone to school to study human history and prehistory, which is the history before people could even write. And what they do is they go and find sites that they can dig. They call them digs, actually, as a noun. I'm at a new dig this month. We call those excavation sites where they dig below the ground, below the surface. And they usually discover interesting things, proof that people lived there at some time in history. Some really just common things are like bowls and weapons and, those sorts of things that we use in everyday life. Of course, long ago, they did use weapons probably every day. Maybe just fighting off the animals, who knows? But, it's an interesting job to have, really.
Indeed, that's what an archaeologist does. And these archaeologists have found evidence of human dwellings at Petra dating back to around 1500 BC. So it's been there for thousands of years. A dwelling is a building in which someone lived, okay, or perhaps worked, but usually a dwelling refers to where they actually live. They sleep there, they cook there, they have their families there and stuff like that. So there's evidence that there were dwellings there. Maybe they did some carbon-14 dating or something like that to determine the time that these structures or dwellings existed.
Sometimes you'll hear people say a dwelling place. It's not a word we use in common everyday speech, but we do use it in writing quite frequently. So you need to learn what dwelling means. So Petra made an excellent fortress since the high cliffs protect the sheltered valley from assault. Remember, Petra is in a basin, which means it's lower than the mountains around them. Now, if you're a fortress, you've got a really strong place where you're being protected from your enemy. Usually we see fortresses as part of a military fort. We've got lots of fortresses around Taiwan that the military has built, but it's a very strongly protected area, and it helps keep you safe from not just your human enemies, but maybe from animals as well.
If you're into fortresses, I think there are several in the hills above Geelong Harbor. So you can go check out those former fortresses there.
Cool.
And of course, Petra was an excellent fortress because it had high cliffs, and those high cliffs protected the sheltered valley from assault. So if you went in there and tried to attack Petra, the soldiers would be high up on the hills there, and they would shoot arrows down at you, and you would be doomed. Now, later, the Nabatean Arabs settled there and made significant improvements, creating an ingenious system of dams and waterways that kept them supplied with water from a nearby spring. So, yes, it's a system of dams and waterways. I guess it's for irrigation or to supply the residents with water for drinking and bathing and watering their crops and stuff like that. And it was quite ingenious, which means it was very clever. It wasn't just a hole in the ground with water rushing in. They had all sorts of different details to this system, so it was quite ingenious. Only intelligent people could have constructed something like this.
Wow, pretty cool to learn about this stuff. Now, I'm from a state in America that doesn't have a lot of natural water in the desert area, so I'm familiar with things like dams and irrigation, because you have to find some way to put the water in a holding spot until you need it, and that's what these dams and waterways were built for. So because they had enough water, they were able to grow crops and trade with other people, and they grew rich there. So they started making a lot of money because, this is very important, Petra was an important trade route or route. You can pronounce it either way. I think in Taiwan we tend to say route, paper route. Like if you have a paper route, you deliver papers. Well, it was a trade route. So merchants were traveling along this way, and they would stop over, and just having that important road in your town contributed a lot to its wealth. So, yeah, this is really important. And it ran from Arabia to Egypt and the cities of the Mediterranean. I should let Tom talk about the Mediterranean because he's really into, was it geography? No, geography. Cities and rivers and oceans. He could tell you about any of the places around the world.
Well, some, but in any case here, Mediterranean, of course, is the sea that's south of Europe and north of Africa there. Italy, Greece, Spain, France, Tunisia, Libya, they all border the Mediterranean Sea. And, of course, Mede means middle and Terra means land. Hence, you have the Chinese term Di Zhonghai, Mediterranean Sea. Okay, let's move on now to the next paragraph. It says, the Nabateans were eventually absorbed into the Roman Empire. So I guess they don't exist anymore. They were absorbed like a lot of groups around the world. They just kind of disappear. A lot of the old Aboriginal tribes in Taiwan were absorbed by other tribes or by people coming over from China a long time ago. So yes, these people were absorbed into the Roman Empire. They don't really exist anymore. And since the Romans preferred trading by sea, Petra fell into decline. This place was inland, and the Romans liked to preferred to trade by sea. They had lots of port cities on the Mediterranean Sea.
It's interesting to me, we often use this phrase, to fall into decline, which just means you start to diminish in strength or wealth or even the quality. You just kind of deteriorate. So fall into decline. Of course, this is the past tense. Yeah, so this was hastened or hurried up by an earthquake that took place, or earthquake that struck. Remember, we use struck. An earthquake strikes, that's the present tense, in 363, or as we like to say, 363. When we have these numbers, guys, in history, we typically will read it out like that. We would never say 363 AD. No, we say 363 AD. Notice I say just the 3, but then I put the last two numbers together. So 363 AD, and that earthquake ruined the waterway system they developed. If you don't have water, you can't have a civilization. So again, hasten here is one of our vocabulary words. To hasten, again, it's more of a formal word. We don't usually use it when we speak, but it just means to do something more quickly, to move or to travel, or here, to fall into decline. It just happened more rapidly due to that earthquake, sadly.
It was already declining, but it declined even faster because of that earthquake, and it ruined the waterway system. And we'll continue talking about Petra in just a couple of seconds. Hey, let's take a break right now and listen to our Chinese teacher.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们昨天带大家到了约旦的古城 Petra， 今天要来谈一谈它的历史哦。那么考古学家其实在 Petra 发现了可以追溯到西元前1500年左右的人类居住的一些证据，所以它真的是一个古城诶。那么 Petra 呢，其实是一个非常好的一个堡垒，因为有高大的悬崖保护着掩蔽着山谷，免于受到攻击。不过呢，后来啊，因为有一些阿拉伯人，那个阿拉伯人呢是纳巴泰阿拉伯人，纳巴泰。那些阿拉伯人就定居在 Petra 的地方，然后做出了一些重要的改善，而且建立了精巧的水坝系统跟这个水道系统。好，那当然 Petra 就会变得越来越富有啦，因为它接近一条从阿拉伯半岛到埃及还有地中海城市的重要贸易路线。在这一段最后一句的地方，同样也有一个关系子句，先行词是 an important trade route， 关系子句从 that 一直到句尾的地方。当然后来呢，这些纳巴泰的阿拉伯人就被罗马帝国所并吞了，而且因为罗马人就很喜欢海上贸易嘛，所以 Petra 就开始陷入衰落了。在西元363年有一场地震，那一场摧毁航道的地震发生了之后，就加速Petra 整个城市陷落的情况。我们来看一下第二段，第二段的第一句逗点之后又出现了 since， 那在这里你可以判断一下，如果它是自从的意思，自从什么时间点，前面就会搭配现在完成式，这不合理。但是根据语义，如果表示原因，则是因为罗马人喜欢海上贸易，逗点之后，所以 Petra 就开始 fell into decline，陷入衰落了。那么在第二句的地方有一个关系子句哦，我们来看一下，先行词是 an earthquake in 363 AD， 在西元363年那一场地震。什么地震呢？ That 到句尾左右括号限定用法，在那一场摧毁航道系统的地震之后，就加速 Petra 的衰落。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, let's continue talking about Petra, the rose red city of Jordan. So we're talking about the Nabateans, and they, of course, were eventually absorbed into the Roman Empire, and Petra fell into decline. The Romans liked to trade by sea and not by land, so Petra was less and less important, and this decline was hastened by an earthquake, which occurred in the year 363 AD, and that earthquake, of course, ruined the waterway system. So, yeah, people left there, and it was kind of abandoned in the desert there. So the city was lost to Western explorers. Western explorers did not know it was there. Maybe local people knew it was there. We don't really know, but according to our article here, Western explorers did not know about this place until a Swiss traveler wrote about it after an expedition there in 1812. So this particular Swiss person was probably sick and tired of selling Swiss watches and Swiss chocolate and stuff like that, and thought about going on an adventure to the Middle East. And this Swiss traveler, stumbled into this place and wrote about Petra after an expedition there in the year 1812. An expedition, of course, is when people get together to explore a certain place. There were lots of expeditions to the New World, for example, by explorers from various countries.
Yeah, we don't have many new places to go these days. Most of the earth has been explored, but back then, of course, there were lots of expeditions or journeys that a group of people would undertake. Usually they had a purpose. Maybe they were looking for something to take back home with them. Maybe new vegetables or fruit or gold, silver, who knows. So since then, and that's 1812, Petra has become a symbol of Jordan. Remember, Jordan's a country, and Petra has become a symbol of this country. I would say that Taipei 101 is definitely a symbol of Taiwan. So it's something that represents your country, that people think of. When they think of Jordan, they think of Petra. And, of course, it's a popular tourist destination. And if you've seen some videos online, you'll know why it's popular.
Okay, so yes, indeed, it is a symbol of Jordan, and it's a popular tourist destination. Lots of people want to go there and check it out, and it was made a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1985 and named as one of the new 7 Wonders of the World in 2007. We often hear talk about the 7 wonders of the world, of the ancient world. I think the pyramids of Egypt are one. The Hanging Gardens of Babylonia is another one. But we've got some modern ones as well. So it was named as one of the new 7 wonders of the world in the year 2007. And Petra is also famous as the setting for the climax of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And it's also featured in the second Transformers movie. So, if you've seen the movies starring Harrison Ford called Indiana Jones, there's a series of those movies. This particular movie featured a climax. A climax, of course, is where the action kind of comes to a climax, comes to a peak there. It's the most exciting part of the movie, and then after that, everything kind of cools down and the movie ends. So, that was the setting or the place where the climax of the movie took place.
So it's the most intense part. It's the most exciting part. It's the most important part. If you miss it, you kind of miss the best part of the movie, right? So Indiana Jones, I remember this. It's got a lot to do with the Middle East. So it was also featured in the second Transformers movie. I must confess, I've seen none of them. I don't think I missed anything. Although I've got little nieces and nephews that love the Transformers. So, unfortunately, it says here the increase in tourism has had some adverse effects. Adverse just means bad. We've seen this word a lot in the news if you're reading about the COVID vaccine that people are trying to get. If it has an adverse event or adverse reaction, it just means, ooh, it's a bad reaction. And sometimes those adverse events can even be death. So if you have adverse effects on a tourist area, it means something's being ruined, which is very sad. Sometimes you have too many people that go to a very fragile place. It's easy to ruin it. You know, like Queen's Head in Geelong, they've had to really protect that rock because too many people are playing on it and pushing on it, and we don't want to destroy it. So sometimes you have to protect these popular tourist areas.
Right, I think I know who you're talking about there, but we don't dare say who. But in any case here, yes, tourism has had some bad or adverse effects. Sometimes we have adverse weather and adverse effects. That's a common usage of the word adverse. And of course, you got guides there, people who guide tourists into the place. They have to be constantly on their guard to prevent tourists from climbing or riding on the structures or breaking off pieces for souvenirs.
So
you've got these tour groups going there. And of course, the guides, boy, they have to be like kindergarten teachers there. They have to keep an eye on those tourists so they don't wander off and climb up on the structures or ride on them. Hui was here in 2012 or something like that.
Or they'll write, Johnny loves Susie. Who cares? Quit ruining these rocks.
Stuff like that. And of course, they even try to break off pieces for souvenirs. That's not cool.
Horrible.
And what's worse, even worse than that, some of the restoration projects that have taken place have utilized cement or maybe concrete, which actually accelerates the weathering process. So, of course, when things are starting to decay, they have these restoration projects that goes on here in Taiwan, especially for old Japanese-era structures. They kind of try to restore them. They try to make them again, to repair them so that they look like they did 100 years ago. And, of course, they're trying to do this to Petra as well. But, hey, they have caused damage because they use cement or concrete. That, of course, is a common construction material, and that actually speeds up the weathering process.
Yeah, cement is actually an ingredient in concrete. So it's a powdery substance. And sadly enough, they were just trying to help it, and it's actually hastened. Remember our word, hasten the weathering process. So with the city already endangered by erosion or that slow wearing down over time, Petra's in need of protection. Oh, who's going to protect Petra? We've got experts who have called the tourism there unsustainable, meaning it won't last forever, guys. So some areas like the burial chambers inside Al-Khazna are now off limits. A chamber is just a space. We usually see it if they talk about burial chambers, or a chamber in a castle is a bedroom, just so you know. It's kind of an old-fashioned word. So it's an enclosed space, so it's a room of some sort. If it's off limits, it means you cannot go.
Exactly. So, yeah, don't expect to go in there and see the bodies of the kings in there. And should you be fortunate enough to visit Petra, if you are fortunate enough to go there, remember to show some respect to this delicate treasure. I think we don't really need to tell the good people of Taiwan that. I think they're pretty good as tourists. But, of course, we do know that there are some people in the world who aren't so nice to tourist sites. So, yeah, maybe we should remind those people that, hey, if you wreck this thing, it will be gone forever, and Petra definitely is worth preserving. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
那 Petra 衰落之后是谁发现的呢？其实一直到西元1812年，有一位瑞士的游客在那边探险，然后写下了这座城市，西方的探险家才又重新发现了 Petra。 所以从那个时候开始啊 Petra 就成为约旦的象征，而且是很受欢迎的 tourist destination 旅游的胜地哦。它在1985年被联合国教科文组织列为世界遗产，而在2007年的时候又被选为世界的新7大奇景。我们来看一下这一段，注意一下第二句。第3段的第2句有2个被动哦。第一个被动出现在前面 It was made， 它被列为世界遗产。第2个被动逗点之后 and named as， 被命名为新的世界7大奇景。好，不过不幸的是哦，游客多了就会有一些负面的影响啦。因为那边的导游啊，还要这个时不时的一直要防止游客去攀爬啦，或在建筑物上面写字啦，或者是有人可能会损毁这些土块啦，来带回家当成纪念品。而且更糟的是啊，有一些修复的工程用水泥其实会加速风化的过程，所以其实 Petra 已经受到侵蚀的威胁，它现在是需要保护的。我们来看一下最后这一段的第2句，导游要防止游客不做哪些事。我们把动词的 prevent 抓出来， prevent someone from doing something。From 后面出现3个动词 ing， 一个 climbing， 另外一个 writing， 第3 breaking off。 好，第3句的地方要注意有关系子句哦。第一个关系子句是先行词 Some of the restoration projects， That 到 place 是限定用法的关系子句。那么之后呢，我们看到逗点之后有一个 which， 一直到句尾，这里也括号起来，补充说明的就是前面的 cement 水泥就会加速 weathering process 风化的过程。好，所以城市已经严重的受到侵蚀了，现在 Petra 就需要保护，而且专家觉得那里的旅游业根本没有办法永续unsustainable。 像有一些地方啊，比如说是卡兹尼神殿里面的墓室，现在就已经禁止进入了。所以如果你还有幸拜访 Petra 的话，记得一定要保持敬意哦。这一段最后一句话我们要特别看一下， should 的开头并不是应不应该，而是一个假设语气省略的倒装句型。因为如果我们要对于未来产生出一个对未来事实相反的陈述，万一你可以有幸进入，表示基本上不太可能去 Petra， 因为它已经这个有些地方禁止进入了。所以句子本来应该是 If you should be fortunate enough， 万一你刚好可以去看。那么如果我们把 if 省略掉， should 就会抓出来到句首的地方，句子变成这句Should you be fortunate enough， 它是一个假设语气的倒装句哦。以上是我们今天的内容，我是安娜，我们下次见。
That's it, guys. We hope some of you out there at least get the chance to go and see Petra. Sounds like a great, great vacation. We hope and wish all of you out there have a vacation soon. I'm looking forward to mine. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. Goodbye.
Bye.